You've probably heard an English, Scottish, or Irish accent before, but there's one accent in the British Isles that's so unique you'd probably think it's a different language entirely.
What about you, big lad? You look up the hey do. Do you think I came up the lagging in a bubble?
That was the Northern Irish accent. And if you think the way the English say
What?
is weird, just wait till you hear how it's pronounced in Northern Ireland. But why does the Northern Irish accent sound so different? Not just from England, but even from the rest of Ireland. The answer lies in a huge migration that changed everything in Northern Ireland. And if you don't know what Northern Ireland is, watch until the end, where I'll explain the violent history of Northern Ireland and how it came to be. Before we get to that, let's break down why this accent is so famously hard to understand. The biggest reason? That's without a doubt the vowels. If you're ever unlucky enough to meet a Northern Irish person, ask them to say this sentence. No, it's not pronounced how now brown cow. It's how now brown cow. That's because the ow sound you're used to hearing becomes the rare ow sound in Northern Ireland. If you speak Cantonese, this ow sound will be very familiar. Next up, the a sound. In open syllables, that is, syllables that don't end in a consonant, it stays fairly close to what you'd expect, but in closed syllables, a syllable that ends in a consonant, it shifts to a. So no pain, no gain becomes no pain, no gain. Now here's a sound that's tricky for most people, unless you're from Europe or China, the U sound. In other accents you'd say you and food, but in Northern Irish English, in open syllables like you, it becomes you, and in closed syllables like food, it becomes food. But in Belfast, they just use the U sound everywhere, food. Then there's our, as in flower, tower, or hour. These get simplified to flour, tar, and R. So if a Northern Irish person says R, they're not trying to sound like a pirate, they're just asking the time. The letter A does its own thing too. It's neither the American eh, nor the English ah. It's more like ah. So this word is pronounced father, and this word is pronounced rather. And if you want to know if someone is from Belfast, just listen to the aw sound, because while you'd normally say shop, in Belfast that can shift to shop. So that's not a shop becomes that's not a shop. Now, if the vowels weren't weird enough, get ready for the consonants. Let's start with the letter T. In many Northern Irish accents, it turns into an alveolar tap. That's the same sound Americans make in the word butter. A quick flick of the tongue against the ridge above your teeth. So instead of bottle of water, you'll hear bottle of water. But it's actually not quite that simple. In regions with a lot of Scots influence, we'll get the Scots soon, the T completely disappears, replaced by a glottal stop. Good luck trying to figure out what someone wants when they ask you for a bottle of water or a bottle of water. Next. Like most American accents, Northern Irish English is rhotic, meaning the letter R is always pronounced. So while someone in England might say caw, in Northern Ireland it's car. Another one you'll notice is that words that end in ing often lose the G. So speaking becomes speaking, and walking becomes walking. Also, in some words, the GH is pronounced not with a K sound, but with a h sound. Shout out Dutch. Think of the word loch, like the Loch Ness Monster. It's not loch, it's loch. Alright, now that we've gotten the sounds out of the way, let's look at a more fun aspect of the accent. Intonation. It's pretty normal to raise the pitch of your voice when asking a question, right? Well, in Northern Ireland, there's a rise in pitch all the time, whether you're asking a question or not. And it's not just the rise. Northern Irish English tends to have very dramatic pitch changes in general. Whether you think it sounds harsh, musical, or simply weird is a matter of taste. But now it's time to learn the real secret to Northern Ireland's unique accent. Let's talk about that migration I mentioned earlier, because this is what really sets a Northern Irish accent apart. Back in the 1600s, thousands of Scottish settlers crossed the water in an event called the Plantation of Ulster. And with them, they brought three things: their Protestant religious beliefs, their loyalty to the British Crown, and most importantly, their language. These Scottish settlers spoke a language called Scots, which split apart from English around 1,000 years ago. In some areas, Scots outnumbered English settlers by as many as 6 to 1, so you can imagine the huge impact they had on how we speak. Here's a fun example. In Scots, the nt ending on negative verbs changes to ni. So wouldn't becomes wouldn't, couldn't becomes couldn't, and didn't becomes didn't. Don't can even become dinny, so I don't know is a dinny know. Another difference is that have can become hey. So instead of we have a problem, you might hear we hae a problem. Some words also sound very different. Cold is coil. Hold is howl, and old is owl. Not so respectful terms for old men and old women are owl boy and owl doll. A lot of common vocabulary came from the Scots language, wee meaning small and wean meaning child, which comes from the Scots phrase weein meaning small one. Other Scots contributions include aye for yes and naw for no. Maybe we really are pirates. But remember, Scots influence isn't just about vocabulary. In fact, Northern Irish speech exists on a kind of spectrum, ranging from standard English with a few slang words mixed in, to Ulster Scots, a unique form of gibberish you dare not try to understand.
Just so the sock will go longer, the mother got these trainer shock things there. Oh god, you wouldn't get along getting the ankles frostbite off you.
Next, let's look at some more unique vocabulary in action. Instead of saying you, we often say ye. And if we're talking to more than one person, we'll say yous. Then we have the legendary word we, as I mentioned in the Scots section. Everything's we. A wee drink, a wee minute, a wee dug, a wee scrap behind Tesco. I'll fucking knock you clean out, mate. Fucking wash yourself, I'll fucking kill you, mate. And speaking of fights, if you want to call someone an idiot, idiot is the perfect word of choice. But here's a word you really have to know, because it might frighten you otherwise. Crack. No, it's not illegal, it just means a bit of fun and a good time. We also often say banter to mean having a laugh. Now for some crucial phrases when visiting Northern Ireland. To greet someone, you could simply say, "Bout you," "Alright mate," or "What's the crack?" But don't go telling your life story in response, because it's just a greeting. No one's asking because they actually wanted to know how you're doing. And if you want to casually thank someone, you could simply say, "Cheers." "Is your pint bag, lad?" "Aye, cheers mate." A classic feature of Northern Irish speech is to repeat what you said again at the end of your sentence. For example, "I'm hungry, Swan," or "He's a farmer, so he is." I have no idea why we do this, so if anyone has an explanation, please let me know. Now that we've learned about the accent, let's have a look at the turbulent history of Northern Ireland. In the early 1900s, all of Ireland was under British rule, but in 1916, Irish nationalists led a rebellion called the Easter Rising, which was followed by the Irish War of Independence. However, many Protestants in Ulster wanted to remain a part of the UK, so in 1921, to prevent more violence, Ireland was split into a British Northern Ireland and an independent Southern Ireland. This is called the Partition of Ireland. But rather than peace, Northern Ireland faced a deadly conflict known as the Troubles, which lasted 30 years. From 1968 to 1998, the Nationalists, who were mainly Catholic, wanted to unite Northern Ireland with the South. The Unionists, who were mainly Protestant, wanted to stay in the UK. This division sparked decades of violent conflict, with paramilitary groups from both sides engaging in brutal acts of violence. Thousands of civilians lost their lives in bombings, shootings, and other terrorist attacks. However, after 30 years of bloodshed, peace was finally negotiated. In 1998, the Good Friday Agreement was signed, bringing an official end to the violence. The agreement set up a power-sharing government in Northern Ireland and established steps towards long-term peace. The peace process is ongoing, and while the Good Friday Agreement brought major political stability, there are still visible reminders of the divide, like the peace walls that sprawl across Belfast, separating Protestant and Catholic communities, and the fact that Protestant and Catholic children still usually attend separate schools. Today, Northern Ireland is a mostly peaceful place, with a warm and friendly people, so don't be scared to come and visit. Anyway, that's Northern Ireland. If you're still confused, don't worry, because so are we. Thanks for watching.